My name is Kaio, and everything I'm going to tell you now happened less than 2 months ago. Before that, I was just a freelance photographer, specializing in abandoned places. I've always been fascinated by places that seemed frozen in time, but this curiosity almost cost me my sanity. The story begins when I received an anonymous message with the coordinates of an abandoned amusement park in the interior of Minas Gerais. They said it had been closed after a series of disappearances in the 1990s. Driven by curiosity and the opportunity for a good portfolio, I grabbed my equipment, filled up the tank, and drove for 6 hours until I reached the small town of Pedra Seca, where the Alegria Infinita Park still stood, although swallowed by the bush and covered in a sepulchral silence. Upon entering, the first thing I noticed was the Ferris wheel still assembled, but covered in rust and vines. The cabins moved slowly, even without wind. I thought it was just the effect of time, perhaps some structural imbalance. I started taking pictures and everything seemed normal, until one of the booths stopped moving. When I looked through the lens, I swear I saw a child sitting inside, pale-faced and dark-eyed. I pulled the camera away to confirm, but there was no one. I ignored it, trying to remain professional. I kept walking, capturing details of broken carousels, overturned stalls, and strange graffiti on the walls. Some looked like Latin words, others just symbols. That's when I heard the first laugh. High-pitched, distant, childish. The sound came from a booth of broken mirrors. I stepped inside only to see my distorted reflection over and over again, but something was wrong. One of the reflections didn't move with the others. It smiled when I didn't smile. It stayed still when I spun. Suddenly, it tilted its head impossibly and screamed, a high-pitched sound that seemed to explode inside my skull. I ran, tripping over shards of glass and wood. When I got out of the cabin, I saw that my equipment was turned off, even though it had a full battery. When I tried to turn it back on, the photos I took were distorted, some showing figures I hadn't seen in person. Children. Always children. Always with black eyes and a blank expression. That night I slept in my car, parked a safe distance from the park. Or I thought it was safe. I had a dream, or nightmare, about a faceless clown who led me through underground tunnels full of broken toys and bones. When I woke up, there was a brand new park entry bracelet on my wrist, with the name Visitor 101 written in red. I remembered that in the old archives I had read that 100 people had disappeared there. When I returned to the park, determined to understand what was happening, I found a small locked door under the roller coaster tracks. I broke it open with a crowbar and climbed down a rusty ladder to a damp room with old photos tacked to the walls. In all of them, the missing people, and in one of them, my face. The laughter came back, closer now, almost behind me. Children's voices sang a dissonant melody. In the center of the room, a small altar with burnt toys and broken porcelain dolls. A candle was still lit. There was a book, a diary perhaps, in which the owner of the park, a man named Adalberto M., spoke of a pact made to keep the park eternally alive in exchange for young souls. To seal the place and break the pact, someone would have to complete the ritual he didn't have the courage to do. Turn off all the lights in the park manually and bury the diary under the Ferris wheel before sunrise. I accepted. Not because I was brave, but because I knew that if I didn't do it, I might never get out of there. I ran from lamppost to lamppost, turning off the lights with an old pair of pliers I found. As I did so, the children appeared, motionless, watching, smiling with their mouths sewn shut. When I finished, I buried the diary under the mud of the Ferris wheel. The ground shook, a deafening scream echoed beneath me, and then silence. Absolute. The sun began to rise, and the park began to crumble. I barely escaped. But I didn't leave in one piece. Ever since then, when I look in the mirror, I see, behind me, one of the children, always the same one. And every night, at exactly 3:33, I hear the sound of a toy spinning, even though I now live miles away. Something followed me. Something. It wasn't buried with the diary. And today, when I looked back at those corrupted photos, I noticed a new detail in one of them. An image reflected in the mirror, holding a camera. But it wasn't me. It was the same faceless clown from my nightmare, and he was smiling.